One of the most fascinating episodes, really, that occurred in my work as a geomancer came when I was invited to do some work with horses. So, prior to that, I had been a geomancer. I had been working with the energy in homes to ensure that the home environment supports the health and wealth of the people residing there. I also worked with businesses to ensure that the energy in business premises and the spirit of the business were working together for maximum potential and profit and health of the business. And from that work, I also ended up working in agricultural properties. So I was working as a geomancer to work with the energy of land to ensure that the yield of the farm, whether that be crops, was as good as it could be, and reducing the use of pesticides, herbicides. So working more in sync with the natural environment. So we were using earth energies to ensure that crops germinated, that they, at a higher rate, they grew more uniformly, that plants were stress resistant, so they would produce more yield, crop in a shorter time, and be more resistant to pests and disease and other stresses. And in that process, reduce the consumption of water and the need for sprays. And I was also working with animal health. So because animals, when they're farmed, can't naturally roam the plains, they are housed. They are kept in particular farm boundaries, and over winter they might be cattle might be housed in stables in barns. I was working with animal health in that way to ensure that calving rates were good, milk yields were good, flocks of sheep were healthy, all those kind of things. And that led people to inquire with me whether I would do any work with horses. Because, and I wasn't, I have to say, I wasn't a huge horse fan. I found them quite scary and intimidating, having had some nasty experiences with them as a kid growing up on farms myself. So I wasn't, I was a little bit reticent because of my own fear. But I was called in, really. What started off with a journey of helping one horse led into a miraculous discovery of how to work with horses on many ways. So I was initially called to this quite elderly small grey pony who was coming to the end of her working life because her eyesight was deteriorating badly. As many greys do, she'd developed aggressive melanomas. They were all round her eyes and her ears. They were down her throat, making swallowing difficult for her. They were on her abdomen, her stomach, and they were underneath the tail. Now, aggressive melanomas are very common in grey horses, but the people, her owners, wanted her to have the best retirement. So initially I went in to douse sort of whether her dietary requirements were met, and whether she was happy and healthy. That led me down a really interesting journey, because when I started to get into dowsing with her, like when I douse with people, it's as if I'm in their body with them. I can feel their aches and pains. I can, feel what they're feeling, and that enables me to really tune in on where they need support. So she very quickly opened up and allowed me to do the same thing. And because I could see energy, I could see in her aura where these melanomas were and what the energy was. And they'd been very aggressive. They were progressing really, really fast. So she very obligingly let me work with her energy field to kind of slow up this very sped up energy, this consuming energy that you get in melanomas. To slow it up, we mustn't feed it with more energy. We've kind of got to isolate it so it suffocates itself. And the melanomas started to slow down. The growth rate that she had achieved slowed massively, but she still had this real deterioration in her eyesight. And so she was going out with a companion horse. Now, when you start talking to one horse, you end up starting to talk to all of them. So it became very quickly apparent that when I was dowsing the blind horse, I was also getting input from her companion, who was in the adjacent stable when this work was being done. And it became very obvious very quickly that because he was still working, he was still playing a lot of polo, that when he was out, he almost was feeling responsible for the blind horse, and he actually wanted more time off, shall we say, was the general gist of the energy flow that was coming down. So I was trying to work with the spirit of place to find a way that this blind elderly horse could navigate her way around successfully without having to have a companion with her all the time, because it was leading to real problems with the management of the horses, who was out when, who was in the stables and who was going out, and all those kind of things. So I did some work with the spirit of place, and this is where it starts to get really bizarre. So I'm going to share something really vulnerable here and off the wall. So I was working, we were with the stables, were working with the horses in the stables. There's a large school in front of us, menage, and then the fields that she went out to were beyond that. So I was stood communicating with the nature spirit, saying, how can this horse read where everything is? Because she could read the energy in the ground. I worked out, and she informed me very quickly that, the horses, and I'd known this for many years, that animals use earth energy flows, paths of chi, water. They're very sensitive to these things. So they use it to read the energy. They can feel where the energy of objects are, because trees and fences, not necessarily fences, but trees and organizing objects, they can feel the energy coming off them. So she knew where she was. But it wasn't as clear cut as we would like. And it would have been helpful, the nature spirits told me, to work with the spirit of horse. Now, I was used to working with the spirit of place. I worked with the spirit of trees, and I was talking to the individual animals. I was using dowsing to ask questions. I was receiving information from them as energy that I was interpreting, and using dowsing to make sure it was what I was interpreting I could make sense of, and we could apply it. And so I thought, well, I'll try working with the spirit of horse. And what happened next was really, really bizarre, because for a moment then, this huge kind of like spectral image of a horse come, quite scary looking creature, almost dragon-esque in the head, appeared in the stable. It was enormous, and I kind of took a step back, and I've seen some weird stuff in my life, but that was, I kind of wasn't expecting it to suddenly appear. And I was like, whoa, that was a bit bizarre. I didn't say to anybody there who was watching me do this work that's what had occurred, by the way, because I thought they might, actually cart me off to a nutty home. And I mean that in the nicest sense. They probably thought I got having some kind of delusional or, weird hallucinogenic experience. So I saw this spectral thing that one time, and I thought, I'm going to have to come back and do this, because I was just a bit shocked, and I went out of the sort of mental state that I get myself in to do this work. So it's kind of like, I describe it almost like a waking dream, because I'm able to have different states of consciousness while I'm awake. So I went back and thought, I did some dowsing around the horses, and I said, was that the spirit of horse? And would it come back? And the horses said, yes, if you want, we'd love to work with the spirit of horse. It makes us feel safe. It's kind of like the herd instinct. And it's not as passive as I thought. It's really powerful, really strong, almost slightly aggressive, more like a proper stallion. It was really, it got some fight in it. So I thought, well, I'm prepared this time. Let's invite it into this space where we're working. So I communicated with the spirit of place, all the nature spirits in the area. There's a wood next to us. I said, is it possible to create an energetic holding space so the spirit of horse can come and I can communicate with it? I got an answer yes through dowsing. So with intention, I just invited it into the space. Now, few really weird things happened here. There was at one moment while I was concentrating, there were people witnessing that. There was like a really small, like a whirlwind of energy that whipped up the leaves in one corner. And apart from that, it was a really still day. And then I saw this huge spectral figure. I ended up calling them fukas, which is like the Irish word for a spectral horse. I ended up calling it this fuka thing appeared. And I was like, my God, I could see it, I could sense it. And I hadn't told the people what I was doing at this time. They just thought I was doing, ordinary geomancy stuff. And then the owner was sort of watching me. She said, what are you all looking at? And I went, what do you mean, what are you all looking at? She says, you and all the horses have all stopped and looked at this one corner. And the wind had dropped at this time, the whirlwind, all the leaves had fell to the floor, and I could see this spectral figure. And all the horses were looking at exactly the same spot. Then, because there were several of them loose, they all started whinnying and they all ran up to this corner, this big empty corner, and they all stopped and looked at this, what was apparently empty space, whinnying at this corner. And it was like they knew that the spirit of horse was there. They were all excited. Yet I still didn't tell people what was there. I said, we're going to use this energy, and literally this thing is going to appear when this blind horse wants some companionship to feel safe, so that the other horse, the real horse companion, can wander off and go and have a break. That was basically the idea. Now, I hadn't told anybody about this. I just thought, let's see how we go. So I said to the owners, I said, release the two horses into the paddock as normal and let's see what they do. So she did, and she reported back that they were no longer glued together. They were going and grazing separately around this big field, several acres, that they were grazing independently, whereas before the blind horse had stayed with the sighted horse really close. And she said, and something really weird happened, because next to this field that they were grazing was a drive that went down to a nice big house in the countryside, beautiful house. And one of the children who lived there used to ride his bike down this long drive, long farm drive, good track across the countryside. And he said this morning, she told me the next day, she said, this morning the lad came up to me and he had a really weird experience cycling down the side of this field. He said he was riding his bike and he could hear this massive thunderous horse running down the track next to him. He could hear the hoof prints hitting the ground, hear it running. He said it almost scared him, because he turned to look thinking a horse was there. He said there was no horse in the field, but he could distinctly hear this horse running next to him. At that point, then I disclosed to the owners what we'd done. They were highly delighted, and they continued to work with this spectral horse. We all did for a long time to make sure the horses in this area felt really safe, really protected. They all kind of improved in their well-being, in their health, in the work that they did. They spooked less being transported. They would get on and off the loading of the trucks more easily. It was just a phenomenal experience. And I haven't really shared this story, and I haven't really shared it in depth. So this is just to give you an insight really of what can we achieve when we work with spirit. So we can work with the spirit of place, is what geomancers do, but you can work with the spirit of horse. I'd already worked with the spirit of you can work with the spirit of cattle. There are all these archetypal energy forces, and when they appear, they're big things. They're holding an awful lot of energy, and when we can consciously engage with them as a human, talking to the diva of that animal to try and work out how we can best look after and work with the animals that we're working. In this case, it was working horses. The benefits to the people in the understanding of what horses needed and how they wanted to behave, because they're in very segmented, paddocks with fences round. Horses are a herd animal, and they were often separate. They weren't held in big numbers, and they often felt very vulnerable to predation, even though there's no predators really in this country, but their instincts were still there. So putting this sort of spectral horse out with them and asking it to appear in the field where they were out there, their behaviour changed considerably. So it was a joy to watch, and they were very, very happy. And so just wanted to share that. It's a bit of a vulnerable share, and I know some people may think it's complete, an utter unbelievable, but you can think that if you like. And I've done that work several times now, where I've gone to many different equine establishments and followed the same process. And each time, this slightly different looking spectral horse, huge thing will appear. And it is created very much out the element of horse that's in that energetic matrix that contains the matrix of all things. But they're pulling the energy of the geography. So they're sort of place specific. So it's really interesting. And I'm going to be talking about this more, obviously, in Equus, which is a brand new program that I've got coming up, which is going to look at the basic, how we apply dowsing to equine health. So it's about diet, nutrition, sites of injury. It's about their suitability for their work. Do they enjoy their work? But we're also going to be looking very much at this etheric equine energy that, because everything is interconnected. So if you imagine that the cake that makes reality has the energy of everything in it, so we're tapping into this energetic blueprint or morphic resonance and memory of what it is to be horse, and bringing that in so that horses in a very man-made environment of stables and paddocks and work, they're no longer roaming the plains as wild herds. How we can bring that energy back to them for their improved health and well-being. So yeah, Equus is you can sign up to Equus now. It really is for dowsers who know how to dowse. They know their yes and their no response. They understand the mechanism of dowsing. It's not suitable for beginners. It's only suitable for horse owners if they've got some dowsing experience, which many people do. But it's not suitable if you've got no experience of dowsing. But you don't have to know anything really about horses because of how the dowsing works. Because you can dowse off lists and charts. You don't have to, or it can all be done remotely. You don't even have to get, you can do it remotely or on site. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, if you'd like information about Equus, do let me know. There'll be and I can send you the link to find out more. But more will be coming up in the next few days. So this is just a quick insight into some of the things that we will be looking at. So I'm really excited to bring this new offer out there to you.